piece of my duct tape to build my tabernacle when I was up on the volcano. See if my mic is going to work. Let me check on that. If the mic cuts out again, I'll just shut it off. It's developed a funny attitude of late. Sometimes it wants to work, sometimes not. I think it's a millennial mic. It's entitled to throw fits. New place, should be pretty quiet. Let's see what we get. You know, in the largest city in the world, it's a little difficult to find the best cappuccino in town. I ran into a gal that was running the Trump campaign across the state of Iowa, and she said that she'd spent time in Tulsa, worked there and gone to school there. And I said, well, where's your favorite independent coffee in the city of Tulsa? And she goes, I don't know, what's yours? It's all right. You know, Trump and others have adopted the curious custom of hiring Irish redheads to do their fist fighting for them, their street fighting. They're awfully good at it. Anyway, yes, just trying to be friendly, but just what's yours? So I just go all the way down the street, and I said, well, there's this one, and there's this one. And I probably named 4 or 5 coffee houses, and then I go into the depth on every one. Well, you know, this one's owned by a Muslim Arab doctor, and so the ambience is always a little weird, and you can't figure out why, unless you know that it's a fabulously wealthy Muslim physician that owns it, and tried to make it look like a landmark, you know, just right there on Route 66. And I said, and then you go up the street, and this other one is actually a ministry undercover, and there's a curtain in there. And she's been into this coffee house many times, you know. I said, there's a curtain. If you go behind that curtain, there's a whole church. And then there's the different little acorn-type offices. So it's one of these newfangled churches that's into social justice, right? Our enemies. And that's what they're running as their cover, as their beard, as their identity out in the world, is this coffee house. So the coffee house is interesting and in a lot of respects great, but founded for strange reasons. And she had no idea that I knew that much about her town, but I lived there for a number of years myself. So here I am in the greatest city in the world, and we're learning our way around. I'll tell you what, you can bump into Starbucks and walk a block and there's another Starbucks. I remember the old joke, I think it was in New York, somebody published, new Starbucks restaurant opens in restroom of existing Starbucks. Because back when they were expanding, it got to the point of ridiculousness, you know. So I actually keep my pretty virginal Starbucks cup with me. And this way, this is my bathroom ticket. In the richy rich districts of this city, it's hard to find a bathroom. Sometimes you really need a bathroom, so I got my free way into Starbucks without buying any of their junk. Of course, sometimes I do, but you know, their Wi-Fi is all Google-fied. It's just worthless. It's a worthless place to work. Okay, there's a lot going on in the world. Feel free to throw up your questions. It's kind of an odd calm before the storm. You know, even today's Saturday, so as the world has gone around, Dictator Z, that they call the president of Red China, got on TV and said, oh, we need peaceful reunification. So after all these times saying, we will attack immediately, we will immediately invade, we will respond, we will defend our sovereign territory, repeatedly. Now he's like, oh, we no do nothing. We turn other cheek. Right. I don't believe President Xi. I think that his change in behavior is disturbing, troubling. Could somebody give me a sound check? Give me a thumbs up. Just tell me if you're hearing me at all, or if I'm just making faces and there's nothing on there. I'd appreciate it. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about Revelation. I got some questions coming in about Revelation, and it's kind of disturbing. Okay, let's just lay the groundwork a couple different ways. One, Revelation shows a crescendo. Please give me a sound check. Somebody that's out there, just tell me if you can hear me okay. Revelation shows a crescendo. Now, the crescendo is beyond the regular tribulation that we're accustomed to when the seals start to break. And this is where there was none found in heaven or earth that was worthy to open the seals. We can delve into that a little bit momentarily, but I just want to state that there's a progression. There are 7 seals. They get worse. And then there's 7 bowls, and then there's 7 vials. So there are 3 sets of 7 judgments in Revelation. And there's a crescendo. It incrementally increases. And so it's disturbing to me that there's been this mentality for so many years that once the first seal pops, once we realize we're in the book of Revelation, that's it, it's the end of the world, and everything's going to blow sky high, and it's over, and kiss your butts goodbye. Which is pretty prevalent. A lot of people believe that. There's not so many that are like, I want to see these things. I want to be like Psalm 91 and see with my eyes the destruction of the wicked, the purification of the bride, and, these mighty miracles and the 2 witnesses and so forth. So that's the first thing that I want to say about the book of Revelation, is there's a crescendo. So I guess it's still true to say that when the first seal pops, it is the end of the world, but it's only the beginning of the end. And there are parts of that that are going to be loads of fun. All right. The next thing I want to say is there are certain passages in the Bible that are just hotbeds for heresy, that harebrained heretical doctrines come from. And I'll tell you one of them, which is an indispensable part of the Bible. Nevertheless, when somebody wants to go there, I feel like they're trying to stake their claim grandfathered in, and I'm immediately suspicious when somebody's got something strange to say, and they're like, all right, it starts all the way back in, da-da-da-da, drum roll. Try not to shake my table because it just wibbles and wobbles forever. They start with their doctrine, they start to defend their doctrine, and then they're like, and it starts all the way back in Genesis, the 1st chapter. All right, maybe. Because a lot of key doctrines do start in the 1st chapter of Genesis. And a lot of my own things that God's shown me that I've preached and set out there for the world start in the 1st chapter of Genesis. And if somebody wants to talk about the 1st chapter of Genesis, I'm ready to let them talk about it. But I gotta tell you, when they got something that's royally harebrained, and they go, yeah, man, it all starts in the 1st chapter of Genesis. I'm like, in myself, I'm like, here we go. In martial arts, we develop the same things. You'd feel the attack coming. You could tell what the guy what flavor he was from. You could sense the strain. Like the Chinaman asked me haughtily, if you meet a Chinese, a Korean, and a Japanese, can you tell which one is which one? And I actually told him this. I said, if they throw a kick, I can. Sure. And somebody's not spent a lot of time in the martial arts, being around and being, in open circles, competing against other arts, before they can tell by the way a move is thrown. And there are not very many people that'll throw Chinese style kicks and Japanese kicks. I will, but it's not very common. And then, Korea is its own whole thing. So when those attacks start coming, you're like, all right, this is going to be in the Korean style. Okay. And you understand there's not going to be elbows and knees. They just don't do that. Okay. So from experience, and the Bible tells of those who by experience have their senses exercised to discern good and evil. So there is such a thing as the gift of the Holy Spirit of discerning of spirits. But there's also our experience, and the Bible talks about both. And there's a combination of those two working together. A lot of times the Spirit of the Lord will tell me walking in, watch out for this attack, or this is what's coming. And that's when we take it to another level. One time I met some new friends. We were way out in the woods in their little home, and they were having a Bible study, or not a Bible study, but a reunion of people who used to work in a prayer ministry together. And just like the devil, they sent hey, we got a nice question. Thank you, Rebecca. Can you hear me okay, Rebecca? I will get to your question shortly. So we were expecting a lot of people to come to this event, and the homeowners knew all these people from 10 years back, but I was the stranger and my buddy. And so I'm standing in the open forum. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm standing in the open forum, and like the foyer of their house, they had this open area there, and there's a knock at the door. And I look around and I called for the lady of the house. Nobody answered. Everybody was very, very involved in their ladies' chit chat and their cooking and preparations. And so I was on my own to answer the door. And I thought to myself, this is probably one of these 20 or 30 people that all know one another. And none of them know me and I don't know them. So I'm going to introduce myself and let this person in. And the Lord said, well, it may not be one of those people that was actually invited. So I opened the door, and lo and behold, it was the leader, the ring leader, the head instructor of all the Jehovah Witnesses missionaries in the region. And he didn't say that either. He just said, hey, good morning, how are you? But I spotted some propaganda and some paraphernalia and identified him just within seconds. And so I did according to 2 John, and I did not welcome him into the home or bid him Godspeed. Do you know the word says that? I know those non-gospel gunslingers out there think they're supposed to let every swinging Richard up in their secure perimeter. But let me just read this to you. 2 John, starting in verse 10. If there come any unto you, and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed, for he that biddeth him Godspeed is partaker of his evil deeds. So I stepped out of the house, and they have this heavy wooden door, and I closed it behind myself with it was a resounding click. And I stand there and talk to this guy. So I spoke with him our conversation was probably less than 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. And then he was done. He went and got in his car and left. And I went back in the house, and they said, "Sam, who was that?" And I said, "Oh, he was the Jehovah's Witness." And the lady said, "I recognize him. He's been here before, and he's the ringleader of all the Jehovah's Witnesses. He's the one who trains the missionaries. When the missionaries get beat up and they go back to the base, he's the one who charges them up, tells them what they did wrong and how to whoop up on everybody the next time." And they said, "Whatever did you do to get rid of him?" And I looked, and everybody's looking at me now. You know, I had to tell them the truth. I looked at him and I said, "Oh, easy. I just told him what scripture he was going to go to and argue from next." And sure enough, that was it. You know, when he saw the gift of prophecy revealed the secrets of his heart, he was done. He was done. He realized that he was fighting against a superior force. You know, he may not acknowledge that to be God, but he realized he was fighting a superior force. So, when people come to me and they're like, "Sam, hey, Sam, I want to really talk about Genesis 1. Okay, let's hear it." 1 time out of 10, you know, they got something that's not way off kilter. And the book of Revelation is like that. There are parts of the book of Revelation that are hotbeds for false doctrines. And so many of those false doctrines become dearly beloved, and they become firmly embraced, and then it's hard for people to let go of them. And I'd like to help people to let go of them bit by bit and not just come in and smash all their sacred cows. I don't like to do that unless I have to, unless that's the only way. Christy is here. Awesome. It's a beautiful day in Mexico City. Okay, Rebecca was asking if there are shortages in Mexico like here in the States. I read a couple articles today. The most interesting one was on HalTurnerRadioShow.com, where he broadcast that gasoline was $8.49 in California, and shows the video. That's for premium. And then $7.99 for mid-grade, and $7.49 for regular. Christy says $4.52 for diesel, and that's probably in a major metro area. If you get out in the Cabbage Patch or towards a tourist area, it's probably going to be more. That's cool. Christy's running diesel power. And the other alarming thing that was in that article was the Walmart shelves just being absolutely bare. Man, Rebecca, that's double the price it was, and more than double what it was under Trumponomics. And so Hal Turner's broke this down, that the Biden administration has put ridiculous restrictions on drilling, has shut down numerous pipelines and other vital segments of the oil industry. And so this is intentional. He's even talked about, yeah, Rebecca, that's better. You know, it's really cool being in Oklahoma and Texas where they just pull it right out of the ground, almost, you know. But there's refineries in Sapulpa and stuff, and in different parts of Texas, both on the coast and inland. And so there's very little transportation cost, and it's nice to have cheap and abundant fuel. Makes everybody want to run a big block. But yeah, it's way higher. It's way higher. And there's scarcity. So It's not so bad in Mexico. I have not heard of any place where there's not fuel in the stations. The price of gas has gone up a little. It seems to me more, it's about whether you're in a major metropolitan area where the fuel's a little more expensive. There it's like 24 pesos per liter, which is $1.20. And then out in the country, it's more like 19 pesos a liter, so a little less than $1 for a liter. So that's still more than you're paying, but that has been relatively stable. And there's internal war over fuel theft and Chinese involved in panamax and stuff like that. As far as lack of basic commodities, I'm not seeing any of that at all. And I'm not hearing about it in any news reports from any corner of the Republic. So I think that we've got an advantage there. But this nation is not nearly as dependent on the China supply train as the USA is. You know, all the tool stores. Here's the thing, when NAFTA happened and the US factories and jobs went south with a great sucking sound, that's what Ross Perot said would happen. Well, it did happen, and a lot of that industry came to Mexico. And while the globalists did that, they were thinking that, oh, hey, here's these Mexican people that we can oppress. We've had criminal governments in for, you know, decades, and we can just keep that rolling. Well, there's been reforms within the governments of Mexico, and it's become a point of national pride, that industry and those specialists that make nearly everything. So there's a brand called Trooper, T-R-U-P-E-R, Trooper. And almost any tool known to man you can get in the Trooper brand. And Trooper is all made in Mexico. Shovels, axes, hand tools, hoses, anything that you would buy in a True Value store, any kind of a tool, you can get the Trooper brand. And so Mexico has that infrastructure that the U.S. lacks. And so in the U.S., everybody's waiting for the boat to arrive and offload the junk and it to get shipped to the store so that they can run to the hog trough and gobble it up. And in Mexico, there's actually the industry to produce those things. As far as the tools, I think they're really very good. I like the Trooper brand. I like things that are made in Mexico. I buy uniforms for my students that the Koreans came to. That's very interesting, Christy. The Koreans came to Mexico and set up their own factories to sew uniforms. And so while they import some things from Korea, they have national uniforms. And so it's a point of pride that that uniform has a Made in Mexico logo. And it's great. They're tough. They work well. There is a national pride in it like we used to have in the United States. You know, Trump tried to bring this back and we had something of a resurgence. One thing I love from the USA is Channel Lock brand pliers with the light blue handles. And man, I've got a couple pairs here. And like, I paid a lot of money for them and then brought them across the border in my toolbox, you know, because you can't get those. And that's one of the brands that Trump would have the pliers laid out on the table, and he'd go by and he'd say, these are the greatest pliers in the world. I love Channel Lock pliers. Sure enough, it's an American brand, and it's one of the few that stood the test of time. But in order to do that, these companies have had to resist Walmartification. You know, Walmart tries to go in and gobble them up. They did that to Vlasic Pickles, for example. That's just one example that's in a book that's probably 20 years old called How Walmart is Destroying America and the World and How You Can Stop It. So while there was a great degree of brand equity in the Vlasic pickle brand. And you know the Pelican that loved the Vlasic pickles. And if you remember from the 80s, they had their own commercials to sell their own brand of pickles, and how they would snap the pickle, and it was the only pickle that would snap, and then they'd get somebody else's pickle and they'd break it, and it would just be like a piece of Jell-O, you know. It wasn't a crisp pickle. And so Vlasic really made a name for themselves. And so their brand equity was worth some millions of dollars. How many million, I couldn't say right now, but these things are appraised and known. What is the brand equity of this or that? So Vlasic got into Walmart, and then Walmart started beating them down on the price. Walmart made Vlasic have a bigger container, and then drove the price down and down and down, and eventually they basically got to where they owned Vlasic, or drove Vlasic into bankruptcy, and they transferred all of Vlasic's brand equity into Walmart's brand equity. You know, the old timers standing there, hello everyone, it's good to see you today. He's standing right by the Vlasic pickles, and what the person sees repeatedly as they walk into Walmart is not that Vlasic pickles are great. They already know that Vlasic pickles are great. It's that Walmart gives them the Vlasic pickle at by far the best price. So Walmart's the good guy. And eventually, they just, like a parasite, suck the life out of that company, and then either acquire it, move it offshore, force it into bankruptcy, buy the name. And then this has happened, and not just by Walmart, all the big boxes do it. And so we have to bring commerce back. And in Mexico, it's a lot stronger with brands like Trooper. Christy, it's not that the company allows it. I mean, the beautiful woman has never wanted to get bit and sucked dry by the vampire. It's that he is the stronger force. And step by step, they are pulled into the Dracula's castle that they can't escape from. And Dracula's just, now I will drink your blood. You know, they don't engage in that kind of predatory negotiation right out of the gate. They give the company a good deal. But as they started to get strong, Walmart would make opening demands. They'd say, okay, we need you to be able to provide this many units on this many days notice at this price and under these terms. Terms meaning when they get paid. So that could be net 30, it could be net 90. Walmart could be demanding the company to loan them money. And this is what everybody wants of a producer. For myself, in my years as a contractor, everybody wants you to give them free stuff. Everybody wants you to extend them credit. And just engaging in the deal with them, you're putting so much faith in them to start with. You have to tell them, no, you have to pay. Then the materials show up. And then I'm going to loan you the value of this and that and that. And then at this point, you pay. So they started making those introductory agreements. This many units in this amount of time and under these terms and at this price. And, you know, they were kind of acting like, so this is the big leagues, and if you want to play in the big leagues, then you have to be able to produce this much when we say, and provide it. Can you do it? Can you perform or not? And I've had people tell me that as a contract. You telling me you can't fix this, Sam? Oh, right. First, we're going to hammer it to powder, then start all over. Sure, we can fix it. Don't insult my manhood. What? Yeah, but that's the negotiation tactic. Anyhow, there are not the shortages in Mexico that there are other places. As far as those container ships, That's amazing, Christy, that you counted 40 ships yourself lined up off the coast. God only knows what those are full of. On a broader transmission that more people listen to than my personal shows like this with my partners, I put out the open demand. I want the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard to board and search every vessel. And I want to know if there's weapons or screaming Chinamen or any infiltrators or any refugees, if there's human cargo on it, or if there's anything that's against United States law. Because we're on the brink of war. It sounds like a huge Trojan horse that's full of enemy combatants. And while everybody, myself included, talks about, hey, there's a military vessel, and it's here, and it's doing this, and you know, they could shoot a missile or something, all right? All true. But, you know, some of these super Panamax, post-Panamax, Panamax Plus container vessels are up to 500,000 tons. You know that? Our super carriers are only 100,000 tons. And these ships are bigger than our super carriers? And we're just going to let people load them up with, we don't even know what, anchor them off the coast where you can see it? That's a little bit crazy to me. And that does sound like an invasion to me. And so there's two reasons for these shortages. One is certain nations do realize that they are actually at war. The United Kingdom, for starters. And it was the United Kingdom that this last week published the reality of the threat of the Taiwan situation, just absolutely incinerating. Because their carriers over there, it's really the Queen that spearheaded it. You know, Biden is no kind of leader, and there's a lot that he does not have control over. It's just a fact. Merrick Garland and the Attorney General, and who's that other clown? The Secretary of State. Somebody remind me if you think of it. Both of those guys. No. The actual Secretary of State. You know, they're both these skinny white guys that are licking their lips all the time. Which is the one of the signs of deviance. Yeah. I can see his face. All right. So Merrick Garland's the pretend Attorney General. And this is, anyhow, both of those guys, hey, Vex Warfield, welcome. Both of those guys came down and talked with the Mexican president. Now, you're not going to hear this on the U.S. news, but first of all, I went down to, you know, if they're kind enough to come to my city to try to screw it up, I should really go out and greet them, I mean, don't you think? So I did that. There's a great pic of it on Twitter if you're interested. Merrick Garland and I can't even think of the guy's name, but he's the Secretary of State. So both of them came and they sit down with the Mexican president, Antony Blinken. Thank you. I know I didn't have a megaphone, but I made a real nice sign, and there's a pic of it on Twitter if you're interested. It's real close to the top. And I went right down to the presidential palace. But you know, without any of my help, the president of Mexico sat him down. And like schoolboys, they're sitting across the table from him with their little earphones in, right? So they got this high scrimshaw rose. They've got this table all set for their state breakfast, right? And only the Americans, fat Americans, only the Americans throw out on the table. Yeah, that's the guy, Anthony Blinken. Hi, Ellie. They've got their they throw their portfolios right on top of the plate. Like, don't they have aids? Don't they have satchels and briefcases and diplomatic packages and stuff? No. They got to throw it right on the breakfast table. You know, if their words had forked any lightning, it would be different, Ellie. But these guys, it's like they're puppets. So here's what the Mexican president did. When I watched the replay of it on the 6 o'clock news, I was just blown away. It was like cutting an onion just watching it. So the Mexican president sits him down and he said, how it is possible for our two nations to not have an understanding is astonishing to me. How it's possible for us to not have an understanding. So that's a real diplomatic way of saying, I don't know what the hell is wrong with you guys and with your kangaroo government playing both sides on everything and never giving a straight answer to anything. And now that I've got you here, the first thing that I'm going to state is that we don't know what the hell any of you are thinking. And we're neighbors, right? And like, I'm interested in the survival of my nation, and maybe you guys should be interested in the survival of your nation. There's all kinds of weird shit going on, and I can't even get a straight answer from your government or your army. I won't bang on the table. That's how the Mexican president opened the conversation. I find it astonishing that there would not be an understanding between our nations. Like, how's it even possible? Well, obfuscation. Yeah, that's how it's possible. So, you want to know what the person asked me about from Revelation? And an honest question, a question that I've asked before. So, I came to Mexico City, where there was a mighty apostle. Let me see if I can see that again. You know, Scrimshaw Rose, they mod the ships and mod even the container. But just because it looks like containers doesn't mean it's containers. My mic just cut out for a second. Those containers can pop open and be full of naval missiles. You know, the Russians developed that. It's out there. It's a known technology. Missile battery that pops out of the container. In fact, we had to play catch up and make our own. They don't pop out of a container, but we've got vehicles that we can offload that have the missiles that can strike a maritime target, or they can strike a land target. It's called Nemesis. I've written articles about it on my Subscribe Star, and it's one of the things that's enabled us to be ready. Yes, John. Why do we have inspectors? Why do we have a Coast Guard? You know what the Coast Guard was doing just a very few months ago? They were stopping Floridians and saying, hey, you got any guns on board? Don't you go to Cuba with any guns. You can't take guns to Cuba. Well, what the hell's business is it of the Coast Guard to tell an American what he can and can't do outside of the 12-mile limit and where he can and can't go? They're out of their element. They certainly didn't stop the United Fruit Company from setting up banana republics, replete with their whole own armies and fake representative government, starting in 1900. Now that's very interesting. What kind of helicopters were flying around those cargo ships, Christy? Could you tell? Were they Civvy? Were they Coast Guard? Coast Guard birds are generally marked and they're generally blaze orange. Coast Guard has its own color of its choppers. And then military Blackhawks Army helicopters are very distinctive. You know, they're black, they're boxy, they're way heavier than a civilian chopper. They're harder to bring down too. They're tough. Even though that bird's got some, it's been around for a lot of years. Well, there may be some inspection taking place, because that's why we make calls like that. And just myself, the things that I have shouted out and said, hey, Fort McDill, what about this? It's amazing how those cries get responded to. Nobody calls me and says, or stops to visit me in Mexico, but a lot of times what I ask to be done gets done, and that's really the proof's in the pudding. That's the bottom line. So as long as we get our nation protected and get the criminals taken down, great. We're kicking butt and taking names, right? So that's what I demanded, is I want all those ships boarded. And we got sensors, you know, and some of those are hella-born sensors. You know, Christy, that Obama sale of the Long Beach port was something that Obama did that was very disturbing. Trump reversed some of that. How much? It's hard to say. Yeah. Who knows the exact extent of what was done there, and whether all the rats were gotten out of the nest. But Trump actually addressed it for the security crisis it is. And here's what that means. Trump's concerns went into the existing America-loving conservative part of the military, which is significant. It's significant. The military is not all woke and gender fluid. It's not. There's a lot of red-blooded Americans that love our nation and don't want any bad guys in it, and they have bit their tongue for a lot of years, and now they're going to try their best to defend this nation. And so those concerns have gone to them. But yes, I want those ships inspected for sure. So you want to know where in the Word this nice guy, yes. A mentor of mine in Mexico who was a mighty apostle. He did lose his bishopric in the end, but we don't want that to cloud everything he ever did. I asked him one time, and here's the question: what about the 144,000? What about the 144,000? You know, I was watching some old Steven Seagal movies, and there's some really good martial arts moves in them. And there's one scene in Above the Law where this great big old guy, you know, Steven Seagal's like 6'4", and so for a guy to stand up and tower over him and have a great big old belly, you know, this was a 6'8" and at least 350 pound, probably pushing towards 400 pound man. And he confronts Steven Seagal and he says, "Hey, what are you doing to my bro?" Because he was beating up this criminal, you know. They got in this foot chase, and they had to chase him all down the street, block after block, and jumping on cars and everything else. And he finally catches the guy, and he's beating the snot out of him while having a conversation with him. And then because he's in the barrio, he's in the hood, and it can be seen that he's the outsider. This tough guy comes up and goes, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing with my bro?" And you know, bows up, and it was a great big old huge guy. And Steven Seagal said, "Hey, look, man, I don't want problems." And he hits this guy. Stepped in, so it was a reverse punch. So he stepped with his left and hit with his right, and hit the guy. What an observer would think was in the belly. It wasn't in the belly. It was a direct attack at the xiphoid process. It was an attack that Parker style practitioners of Kempo karate specialized in and practiced incessantly was to attack that hanging part of the sternum. It's really a vestigial bone, and you can see it on a man if he's at all lean. You know, when they stretch out without a shirt on, you can see that little part of the sternum hanging down. And just the breadbasket is bad enough, you know, to get hit right in the point of the liver, right where the diaphragm is, below the ribs. A lot of times that'll paralyze the diaphragm, which is what it is to get the wind knocked out. When people say they got the wind knocked out of them, it's because their diaphragm muscle is temporarily paralyzed. And then it gets where it'll work a little bit, and anybody who's been hit or kicked very much knows all about that. But that xiphoid process will actually break and puncture things on the inside of the body. So it's really a lethal force strike, especially if it's a trained martial artist and a guy can hit hard, and especially if a guy just stands there like, look at that, I got my hand forward. Especially if a guy just bows up like that, you know. I don't know why these big guys stick their belly out. It is intimidating psychologically, but it's just such a target. And so the average observer would see that scene, and it's kind of anticlimactic. It's like, oh, he hit that guy one time and just dropped him, you know, like a sack of potatoes. But the fact is, it was a very surgical martial arts strike that entire styles have focused their style on perfecting that attack, and then he used that attack, and he also struck from he struck suddenly, he struck unexpectedly, and he committed his weight. And you know, a trained martial artist could break 3-4 boards stacked together with their hand with that very strike. So yeah, he hit him hard in exactly the right spot. So I wanted to compare to these doctrines. You know, when a big guy like that comes out onto the battlefield, everybody's expecting, in the Battle of David and Goliath, everybody's expecting this prolonged battle to cut him down to size. That it's just going to go on and on and on and on and on. And the hero, whether it was in Above the Law or whether it was David fighting Goliath, he brought him down with one shot. So when I asked the question, what about the 144,000? I gotta admit, I was expecting this melee. I was expecting this detailed breakdown. The tribe of Zebulun would refer to this. I don't think that, Rebecca. I've taught on that. I think that has to do with the Nephilic blood. And negative on that. It's not that. I heard that come out on a broadcast or two. A lot of times it's callers that throw that zany stuff out there and even quote the Bible, and it's like, where did you get that? No offense, I don't subscribe. So imagine my surprise. Nobody else hang up, I'm going to tell you the answer. Imagine my surprise when I said, what about the 144,000? And he said, Sam, it's God's perfect government. 12 by 12 by 1,000. It was very diplomatic, very debonair. And so what he was saying is, this is entirely figurative. Entirely figurative. Which, you all who have followed my teachings I take a lot of parts of the Bible that people say are figurative and say, no, this is literal. I believe this is literal. Here's the reasons why. A, B, C, D. That's where I stand. And so, since I do that so often, it's a little difficult for me to take something that everybody considers to be literal in some way and say it's entirely figurative. But that's what the apostle told me. And in my observation, and I understand that the doctrine of the manifest sons and the doctrine of the overcomer company, which is what led me to open the book and start preaching about gospel gunslingers. That doctrine is intertwined with many, 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 many passages of Scripture that mention numbers. Vex, reach out to me. I got a million ways to do it. So hook it up and I'll find a quiet place, you know. I don't have good studios and stuff right now, but I'll make it work. Wherever you're on, you've been with us for a long time and I'd love to just kick it around and we'll have some fun on the air. So let's see. Gideon's 300. Samson's 300 foxes. Now that's the same number, but those are very different stories. I mean, they come from the same book of Judges, but those two 300s. Do this, Vex. Send me a message on, if you have an email of mine, or on Twitter, or on my contact box on gospelgunslingers.com, and give me a cell phone number and I'll just call you and we'll work it out. No worries. So the different numbers. Now that really happened, right? Samson caught 300 foxes, which should show you that he was operating in some really crazy degree of supernatural power to be able to run out and grab foxes, to find them and to grab them, to get 300 of them, and pretty much simultaneously, or at least during the same weeks, to release 300 foxes, 150 pairs, with burning torches to burn down the fields of the enemy. So, although that happened literally, there's also a future prophetic. There's a future prophetic fulfillment that the sons of Samson will arise, that the overcomer company will arise. You know, I had somebody reach out to me and they were saying we need to build a network. I'm all for being friends, but you know what? We need to be more pressed into the supernatural. Yeah. So the last time I left the country, there was a person that I knew I was breaking contact with, as easy as I am to find. And I was praying about this person, and then I had a dream and they were there. And in the dream, certain things were the same and certain things had changed. And then a little bit of time went by, and then just last night, I had another dream. And in this dream we spoke. That's what you need. You know, getting your cell phone broke could happen anytime, any place. But if the Lord will speak with you in the spirit realm, none of that can get shut down. And I'm just amazed that my countrymen make decisions, key decisions, without any word from the Lord. Or they run to somebody and say, oh, what's the word of the Lord? And I'm not 100% against that, because sometimes we should seek counsel and take counsel. And you know what? There's people that I go to when I need prayer for healing, and there's people that I go to when I need something else that I know that they have spiritual gifts in operation on their life. You know, the Lord showed me stuff in the Bible that absolutely rocked my boat, and that's where I get people that I know operate in discerning of spirits and in the apostolic. And I'll get with them and I'll say, I want to bounce this off. And hopefully, you know, we can spend some time and we can, you know, pray and we can seek God and we can look at the Word together, and the iron can sharpen iron. But other times we have to do it like in an emergency. Hey, what about this? And they got to shoot from the hip. And if they got the goods, it's amazing how they will perform in that moment. It's pretty cool to see. You know, I got to show the angel of the Lord to a brother in the faith. A brother who has really been believing God for more of the supernatural. Because he kind of came up in a denomination that didn't teach a lot on that. So I obviously talk a lot about the supernatural. It's just, you know, where I am and what I do. Christy, the Fivefold Ministry is supposed to be full of the supernatural. But what they've done is they have negated the apostle and the prophet. Then they take the evangelist and somehow make him subject to the pastor, when that's not the way that was supposed to work at all. And if you read through the New Testament in its entirety, it lists not less than 18. The 5 gifts that we talk about are called the ascension gifts, because the word says, I believe it's in Ephesians, when Christ ascended, he gave gifts to men. And then it tells about those 5, but there's also mercy, there's helps, there is giving, there is gifts of healings, you know, there's healing ministry. So there's lots, there's intercession, there's not less than 18. They're enumerated and named in the New Testament. And those 5 are only 5 of them. And so sadly, ever since the the Florida 5, you know, the people that invented this shepherding movement, they're the ones that took the fivefold and gutted it. And so once the apostle and the prophet are gone and the evangelist is subject, then there's no supernatural, and it doesn't need to be. It can go right back to the Roman pyramid structure, and that's what they want. That's what these. Oh, Mexico scored a goal, so everybody's gonna yell here for a minute. It's okay. So the 144,000 is the Lord's perfect government. It's his overcomer company. It is his victorious saints. And you know who else is, what other companies are involved in this, are typical of the overcomer company? The 7,000 that have not bowed the knee to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him. The 144,000. And even the 2 witnesses. Now that will probably be literal also, but it is also figurative that there will be an overcomer company, and the number 2 signifies plurality. So I was expecting this like very involved level of kung fu. The breakdown of all the tribes, you know, the tribes are going to be there. You know, there's one tribe that's missing, I think it's Dan. And there's like a lot of commentaries that are all dead ends, none of them go anywhere, about why the tribe of Dan is not there. Nevertheless, the 144,000 is God's perfect government. And understand that during the millennium, there will be super soldiers. that patrol the earth and that cut out all tomfoolery. There will not be any backwoods of Arkansas where incest is practiced in the Lord's millennium. All things that offend will be rooted out. This is the word. And how is it going to be done? It's going to be done by God's perfect government. He's going to restore his judges as at the first. He's going to restore his judges as at the first. And that's why the pacifist doctrine of Christianity, which so many people think is the core of Christianity, and they're just so misled, and it's such a tragedy, and there's such a part of themselves, of their natural protective instinct, both in women and men. Women have a tremendous natural protective instinct. And to nullify all of that and say, oh no, and now everybody's literally ready to surrender their kids. Oh, sign them up, sex abuse them, bounce them on the Joneses of some clowns, men dressed as clowns, dressed as animals, dressed as monkeys in all kinds of bright colors. And that's all acceptable. But that little bit of defensive instinct, that's not socially acceptable now. So something's really seriously wrong with that. You want me to read you something about the 144,000? I got it open here. This is Revelation 7. 7:2. And I saw another angel ascending from the east. I didn't tell you about my friend seeing the angel. So the angel appeared in the sky. And I show a lot of people when the angel appears, but this guy, it had just never happened. And so as I was walking to meet him, several minutes passed and I could still see the angel in the sky. And I spoke to the angel and I said, I'd like to show my friend, if you just stay there another moment. You know, the angels came to Abraham. He insisted, no, you stay, don't go. I'm gonna cook some food for you. He bowed with his face to the earth. The Lord was among them that time. And then he got Sarah cooking, went and chose a calf, tender and good. You know, that's a lot of money, even today. But back then, that was a lot of money. Killed it. Skinned it quick, which, you know, that takes an hour to get it killed and skinned and gutted and back. To cook it, 2-3 more hours. But he asked the angel to wait for the sacrifice. And Manoah did the same thing in the book of Judges when the angel appeared. You know, the angel appeared to Manoah's wife. And Manoah believed, but he said, if you see the man again, ask him how we're to raise this child. And then the angel, let me just go to it. 1 Samuel, Judges. Here's 12. All right, there was a man whose name was Manoah. 13:3 Judges. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman and said unto her, behold, now thou art barren and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive and bear a son. Hope you can still hear me. They put on MTV. Hopefully that's just for a moment. So the angel's right in the middle of speaking. Verse 4, now therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink not wine nor strong drink, and eat not any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head. The child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Samson is such a key figure. And we used to get little kids into Bible study, teach them about Samson like first thing. All right, here's Samson, here's David, here's Jonah. Boom, boom, boom. And that little kid, his eyes are just like, as big as silver dollars, and you know you're telling this kid, this is the servants of the Lord, and you can be one of these guys. And the kid's like, yeah, with their childlike faith, I want to kill the giants. And then he just crushed that along with Santa Claus, right? Smash that little guy's faith. We should encourage young believers. Say, hey, this is the faith of Samson. And don't forget that in Hebrews 11, the apostle brings up Gideon and Barak and Samson and Japheth and others. He said, I don't have time to get into it. But in the New Testament, the apostle warns us clearly to study these accounts and to treasure them up in our heart. All right. So this great deliverer is going to be born. Verse 5. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. So, in the law of Moses was the Nazarite vow, but it was something that men did of their own will. And for the angel to show up and say, speak to the woman, to speak to the woman and to say, you're going to have a child. She was barren, by the way. You're going to have a child, and he is going to be the deliverer. Hey, this guy. A little bit of this funny money. There is a little bit of inflation here. You know, this was a famous nun that stood up against the Pope. The Catholic, her name's Sor Juana de la Cruz. Very intelligent, wise woman. In fact, the Catholic Church started a rumor that she was secretly a lover of Emperor Charles V, the German Protestant emperor who was doing a lot of good in Europe and reigned over parts of Mexico at that time. And so they started that rumor that Sor Juana was secretly, you know, there was a queen that sat beside Charles V, right? But they started that rumor. No. Sor Juana, the nun Sor Juana is really, she's really the lover of Emperor Charles V. So even though that was very far away and long ago, there's a lot of talk about Carlos el Quinto here still. There's chocolate bars named Carlos Quinto. You know, it just comes up here and there, and she's on the $200 bill, 200 peso bill for the Bank of Mexico. And she's a great heroine of Mexico. Stood up against all those bad guys. Where were we? So, this is how I got off on this tear. Manoah told his wife to tell the angel to stay put. Please. Okay. Verse 6. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God came unto me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, very terrible. But I asked him not whence he was, neither told he me his name. But he said unto me, behold, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and now drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah entreated the Lord, and said, O my Lord, let the man of God which thou didst send come again unto us, and teach us what we shall do unto the child that shall be born. And God hearkened to the voice of Manoah. So first, Manoah prayed that God would send the man of God again. And God hearkened unto the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again unto the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not with her. And the woman made haste and ran and showed her husband, and said unto him, behold, the man hath appeared unto me that came unto me the other day. And Manoah arose and went after his wife, and came to the man, and said unto him, art thou the man that spakest unto the woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, now let thy words come to pass. how shall we order the child, and how shall we do unto him? And the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, of all that I said unto the woman, let her beware. She may not eat of anything that cometh of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her let her observe. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, I pray thee, let us detain thee until we shall have made ready a kid for thee. And I'll let you read the rest of it, how the angel did or did not receive the sacrifice and what all happened after that. But he prayed, he asked the angel to detain, to stick around. So I did that. And I spoke to the angel and said, I would really like to show my friend. It'd be a big blessing to him. So I went, and my friend came to the door, and I said, come outside for a minute, I want to show you something. And the 50 or more times that we've met and looked into the Word and talked about this or that, I've never said such a thing. I've never said, come outside, I want to show you something. So he looked at me, and I said, come out, come out. So he comes outside, and I said, I want you to see the angel of the Lord. I said, there he is, he's right there. And he looked up, and he looked at me, and he looked up again, like intently. And then I looked at him, and he just, and this is a tough guy. And he was just right there on the edge of tears. You could just tell the joy of the Lord came upon him to see that the Lord sent his army to watch over us and to help us. And they're right there, they were. It's pretty cool. All right. I saw another angel, back to Revelation 7. I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. And while we could delve deeper into the idea of the man-child that comes out of the woman, you know, the woman is the one that's persecuted and is driven. And here again, the woman has a dual fulfillment. That is America's 350 years of peace, and I preached all about that. It's on the Good Preaching playlist. Please take a look if you haven't seen that. The United States and Britain in prophecy. The United States and Britain in prophecy. Something like that. Anyhow, it's on Good Preaching. And yeah, you know, we can talk to angels, and it's okay, and angelic visitations are a part of real Christianity, but it is a dangerous ground to tread because there are also imposters. So that's something to know, and there are lots of cautions in the Bible about that. And this is not something that can be dealt with in one sitting, because faulty angelology and deficient angelology has just been rampant. And you know, one of the things that William Branham used to teach on was he would correct angelology, and he would do like I just did. He would do exactly what I just did, show you in the Bible where something happened when he just did the same thing. And of course it blew everybody's mind, because there were, you know, physical healings and stuff that happened with that. Nevertheless, faulty angelology has just been rampant. It's been rampant. And so it's something that I find myself teaching on a lot, is trying to correct and bring in some biblical angelology. But, you know, just ask the Lord to open your eyes, because the angels are a very real part of how the saints overcame in these times. So here's what the angel does. He seals, these were the seal. And this is the man-child company. And this is the Lord's invisible Samsons of another generation. You know, Samson was a singular, but he reproduced after himself with 300 foxes. And when he did that, he spread his anointing to another generation and foretold that others would inherit it. The spirit of Elijah went into the spirit of Elisha, that went into the school of the prophets, that then came back after centuries in John the Baptist, and Jesus flatly said that this was the spirit of Elijah, and then Jesus turned around and said, but Elias is yet to come. So he spoke of another generation, and this is going to be the school of the prophets 2.0. And this is the 144,000. It's God's perfect government. It's God's judges in the earth. It's God restoring his judges as at the first. And you know, there's still 12 gates in the New Jerusalem with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The priests still wear an ephod with 12 stones. You know, there is no disparaging of that fact. But to make this about Israel, to make it a physical sign of the end times, when we're well into the breaking of seals, and a lot of people still haven't figured it out, that their 401k is never going to go anywhere, that their dollar holdings, their real estate it's all going to evaporate in an hour. You know, Kristallnacht is coming. When my own businesses were destroyed, I wrote my senator and said, this is Kristallnacht. But because I'm a forerunner, that kind of stuff affects me first, so that I can come around and tell you what's coming. You know, I got in a horrible fist fight with the lesbian anarchists. I didn't throw any fisticuffs, but oh yeah, they punched and kicked and sprayed mace and swung rubber hammers and yeah. Then they sent out their shock troops, their skinny girly men with motorcycle helmets on, and I learned all about their tactics. I know all about them. They study this. They have meetings. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. God bless you all. Everyone's welcome to come visit me in Mexico. It's a beautiful time of year here. There's a lot of cool stuff to see. Take a little break. Yeah. That I did push back the soy boys. I could tell which one of the lesbian anarchists was the ringleader, and yeah, I almost threw a kick, but I restrained myself and didn't do anything rash. I turned my dollar donations into these red, yellow, and blue money. Feed a lot of hungry kids, Pitweilers. I told my friend who knows how much I hate Pitweilers, I said, these Pitweilers, I'm really warming up to them. And on the other end of the phone, you know, hey, that's one of them, Rebecca. That's one. My student was with me who's had probably 10 karate lessons. He's a teenager. And I told him 8 different things. He said, how do you know those are the anarchists? And they were walking away, so we could just turn around and stand there as these 2 girls were strutting down the street. And I said, first of all, they're lesbian lovers, okay? So don't forget, we're on YouTube. Now, first of all, okay, they're girls with girls. And second, it's the purple hair. Third, they're all in black. It's a black bloc tactic. So I went through 8 different things that they were going to do. And then all of them happened right on cue, to include the hammers. A little bit crazy. Anyhow, we survived all that. Guys, I appreciate your donations. It helps more than you know. I've burned a lot of bridges to come here, and I don't have very many friends. Just so you know, still a fugitive, vagabond in the earth. God's restoring that, you know. He'll set me in a prosperous place. He's honoring the sacrifice. Some things I haven't discussed publicly about giving up my studio, moving out of Chihuahua, breaking up with all my girlfriends. Not really girlfriends, you know, but I had a lot of beautiful women that I could hang out with. All that's gone now. And God has a reward for that. And for the bridges I've burned, God has a reward for that. So He's the one that's going to bring that forth. But I thank everyone that gives me a little bit of refreshment in my distress. And maybe you all will have the blessing of Abigail, that you'll step into, you know, a new and prosperous place because of giving me a little bit of refreshment in this time. So God bless you all, and do keep in touch. There's a lot of ways to reach out to me. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.